Welcome to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Breaking the glass ceiling has been a topic of discussion for almost 5 decades. So, why is it still a topic for discussion now? We'll find out some of the biggest systemic barriers that prevent women from breaking that glass ceiling. And we'll also discuss biases and stereotypes that question women's leadership potential. Today's topic is breaking the glass ceiling while staying authentic to yourself and your values. And I'm joined by Nancy Hamzo. She's partner and corporate M&A lawyer at Baker McKenzie LLP. Nancy, welcome to Empowered.
Thank you very much, Liz. I'm very excited to be here.
I
Also talking about a subject that I love. I think I just finished saying that to you a
no,
couple of
no,
days
this
ago.
is you. I know you are totally passionate about this, and I love the fact that you're here to discuss it. But I want to begin with what, in your views, are some of the biggest systemic barriers that prevent women from breaking that glass ceiling?
So ultimately, I think there's a couple of things that we need to focus on. There's implicit bias that has always existed. We tend to be sometimes unfairly judged on things like our commitment to our career, particularly because for most women, they are the primary caregiver when it comes to their kids. Workplace culture. Some environments, I mean, I work in what I would consider to be a more traditional environment where the culture is very male driven, male leadership traits tend to be the overarching way that we operate with authoritative leadership, sometimes being very competitive, but it would be overtly competitive because I don't like to say women are not good in a competitive environment. In fact, we're very competitive, maybe just not in your face. And then a lack of support structures, right? I mean, a lot of times there isn't necessarily the right mentorship, the right sponsorship, the things that women need to thrive in an environment. And that exists sometimes. And those are the things that I think we are still overcoming as women.
So, you're a partner. What was the defining moment when you realized that you could break that glass ceiling? And how did it change your approach to your career?
So I was working on a really big file. And it was very challenging. It was very early in my career. I was a second year associate. I worked for a senior woman partner. And she came from a different background, right? She grew up in a time where she felt, and she would say this to me constantly, if you want to be good at this job, you have to be great. Being average is not good enough. It's not going to be good enough, and I'm going to be hard on you. And I remember I finished a project. I think I worked 100 hours, over 100 hours. I was exhausted. And at the end of that, I felt quite discouraged. She came in and she said, you know what? I know you worked hard. I appreciate it. You did great work. She gave me some examples of where she thought I thrived. And she said, you can do this. You can do this job. I know you can do it. I see it in you. And honestly, it was like a turning point for me. Having someone that I looked up to, that I know, became a partner under very difficult circumstances, look at me and say, I can do it. It really gave me the confidence to advocate for myself, to be able to go out and find a strong network, and it really helped me realize that part of my journey was going to be stepping into the role of being a mentor and a sponsor because of the amazing impact she had on my career. Because it was like at that cusp, right, where you've just done a lot and you wonder, is this really what I want to do for, the next few years of my life?
I love the fact that you talked about this woman mentoring you, because I believe we all need mentorship, regardless of what level you're at. How can women redefine leadership styles to challenge traditional male dominated paradigms?
I think women need to really embrace what we are good at. First of all, I will say that a lot of what I'm going to talk about sounds like generalities, but they are things where we as women predominantly shine. We tend to be more collaborative, we tend to be more empathetic to things. And I think showing that leadership style, being confident and bringing that to your role is one way that we redefine things, right? We show people that just because we may not have the same leadership style as some of our male counterparts or male colleagues, doesn't mean that we can't be successful. And so I think that we have to kind of step into our potential. We have to own who we are. And that's why I think it's really important to understand your values, right? Kind of what this topic is about some of that.
Okay, so I love where you're going with this. When we come back, we're going to discuss more about breaking that glass ceiling and getting more women up there into leadership roles. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Today's episode, we're discussing breaking the glass ceiling while staying authentic to yourself and your values. And I love the fact that we're going to talk about values right now, Nancy. When my mother left the little village in Macedonia, she was 19 years old. So when she raised me, along with my father, she instilled all those old school values. So, what role did your personal values play in achieving success in breaking those barriers?
I immigrated to Canada when I was 9, and my parents also instilled in me a lot of the traditional values that I carry with me today and that I really try to instill in my kids. Frankly, when I look at my career, I think some of the values that I've carried along the way are things like integrity, resilience, and a real commitment to excellence, and making sure that those things are in everything that I do. I feel like it is really important to know what you're working for. We are professionals and we're obviously working because I think, like what we do. We want to achieve great things, but having that grounded in something more than just the job, I think is what really makes the difference. And I think people can see that. And so for me, it's been my compass. It's my compass in everything that I do. I tell even my clients when I give them advice that they might be like, is that really the advice you're giving me? I say yes, because it's the advice that helps me go to bed at night, knowing I gave you the right advice, the advice that I believe in. And I think that that's crucial to having a fulfilling career.
I totally agree with you. I want to move on to vulnerability. I think for any relationship, whether it's a friendship, an intimate relationship, work, vulnerability plays a huge role. So, what role, if any, did vulnerability play in earning the trust of others as a leader?
Well, I think vulnerability is important because sometimes you encounter people in your career that see you once you've achieved the success. And they don't realize that in order to have gotten there, you also encounter challenges. And I think being honest about those challenges is really important. I think vulnerability has been essential in building trust among my colleagues, not just colleagues with whom, I work with as, where initially I started out as like the associate to the partners, right? Letting them in and seeing that, I was encountering some challenges, being open about that, but also with people that I'm mentoring and sponsoring, letting them know that the path is not perfect and that sometimes you're going to have encounter situations where you may not shine and you have to overcome those things. And I think by telling people war stories and being open about mistakes that you've made, it humanizes you as a leader and it allows them to be themselves and also get the most out of your team because they feel comfortable enough to share with you their challenges, things that they might need your help with that they might not feel comfortable asking. So I think making yourself human is a very important part of being a leader.
I agree. And that's one of the reasons why this show is resonating with a lot of women because people come on and talk about their ups, their downs, their wins, and their losses. And we've talked about mentorship many times. What role did mentorship and sponsorship play in helping you advance to that leadership position?
Well, I think I spoke a little bit about my mentor and I'm going to give her so much credit and I want to say her name. Her name is Janice McCauley, but along the way I've had so many other great mentors. I've had mentors who are male, I've had mentors who are senior to me who are actually my peers. What it's done is provided me with guidance and perspective, right? So mentorship is it helps really understand how an organization works if you have really good mentors, and sponsorship opens the doors. So I have worked with great sponsors that have found opportunities for me and have said, hey, you know what, I think Nancy would be really good at doing that. And I feel like the importance of that can't be overstated enough. You have to have people that even when you're not in the room are going to see an opportunity and maybe suggest that you be the one that take on that high profile case, right? You be the one that take the reins on a specific project that has the eyes of management. Those things are important and you can only get that with solid sponsorship.
I love the fact that you said it has the eyes of management because so many people right now believe that they can work from home and advance and just get to that next level. But I think it's really important if you are trying to advance to that next level, you absolutely need the eyes of management, the eyes of your peers, and you need the support of both as time goes on. I'm not going to ask you the
Exactly.
next question because we've got to go to commercial break, but when we come back, I do want to talk about navigating biases and stereotypes because that seems to be huge. So please don't go away. We'll be right back with more Breaking the Glass Ceiling. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Today's episode, we're discussing breaking the glass ceiling while staying authentic to yourself and your values. So, Nancy, how can women navigate biases and stereotypes that question their leadership potential? Because a lot of women go through this.
Yeah. I think the really big thing, and this is very difficult for a lot of women, is owning their expertise. A lot of women have, a bit of an imposter syndrome sometimes as they progress. I think that it's really important that you recognize that. It's okay, hey, I recognize I have that, but you have to own your expertise. You have to lead with competence, with confidence. That's what a lot of our male colleagues do.
Yep.
And that's how they get you, right? Finding allies, you have to find allies. We talked about that a little bit
Mhm.
earlier, right? Mentors, sponsors, build relationships, but build meaningful relationships with people that you also not only might look up to, but people that you actually like, who you enjoy talking to, who you trust. That's really important. That's to me when what it means to find an ally. And then I think the other big thing is to speak up. We as women need to have each other's backs and the backs of basically anybody that may be underrepresented in the workplace. We have to call it out. If you are sitting at a table and you're sitting at a table with decision makers, it's because you have something to say. It's because they see the value in having you at that table. So don't let that be a lost opportunity if you see something being done to someone or something being said that doesn't quite add up. Speak up, right? Because you've earned that position as a leader sitting at that table. And I think that those are ways that you can navigate the biases, navigate the stereotypes, and actually reshape how an organization is run.
So there are so many male-dominated industries, especially in finance and law.
Yeah.
What specific challenges do women face in male-dominated industries, such as the legal industry?
Well, there are sometimes hiring biases, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes pay inequity. I think earlier on in my career, I did encounter a little bit of that pay inequity. That has changed. The legal industry has changed a lot. I feel very lucky. I'm in a firm that really looks at, what are women doing? How do we get women to progress in leadership? They see the value. And I think having more women leaders has really changed that. But one of some of the other challenges is sometimes a hostile work environment. When you work in a very sometimes competitive environment, there may be things like harassment, discrimination. I've been lucky enough not to have experienced those things, but I know others that have in other environments. A lack of mentorship. And networking. Actually, that is something that I will say is really interesting in these male dominated industries. There's a lot of networking that happens. It
Mhm.
happens on the golf courses, it happens in environments where you may not find yourself. Some women love to golf, and that's great, but some of us don't. And so, what I tell people is you have to find opportunities, right, to be able to network, find your way. But those are things that I think in male dominated environments we're still facing is this, lack of ability to network. And then I think the other thing is stereotypes and general societal expectations. Some women will not be given necessarily, that big file right off the bat, right? You got to prove yourself a little bit. Whereas sometimes some of the, males would get that work. I think these things still exist. I think they exist at a much lesser level than they existed when I first started my career. And I really think that a lot of that has to do with um, the fact that we're talking about these issues more, the fact that women leaders are progressing, people are seeing examples. And then I would say that the other big thing is that a lot of actually my male colleagues are very supportive of women, right? And so we can't underestimate the importance of having male allies and people in leadership who are men that really value having, you know, women partners and women in management because they see the value.
I agree with you. There are so many men out there that are supportive of women and will help guide them and help open doors for them as well.
Yes.
And I love the fact that you talked about networking because we've done an entire show about networking, and basically it has the word work in it. So it is a
Yeah.
job. It's part of the job.
Part of the
And I
job.
and I have a friend who is like, oh, I'm going to go to this event. I'm going to network. And then she says, "Ugh, I have no interest in going." So I make her go. I challenge
Yeah.
her. And then I say to her, I want you to show me 3, 4, or 5 business cards. I want you to go out and meet people so
I
that
love
way.
that you want evidence. Liz wants evidence.
Oh, yeah. When you deal with me, you need the evidence. But,
Yeah,
but
I see
before
it. I see it.
we have to go to break right now, but I want to talk about negotiating for promotions and everything else because that's really,
Yeah.
really important for women. Don't go away. We'll be right
100%.
back. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Today's topic is breaking the glass ceiling while staying authentic to yourself and your values. I'm joined by Nancy Hamzo. She's partner and corporate M&A lawyer at Baker McKenzie LLP. Nancy, there's so many young women that come out of university, or there've been women that have been in a job for a very, very long time and really don't know how to negotiate. What are strategies that women can use to negotiate for their next promotion, equal pay, and even leadership roles?
So the first thing is to know your industry, right? So you first have to really understand the industry you're in, do research, right? I tell women this all the time. Speak to recruiters, speak to people in the industry, understand what your peers are getting paid, what are they getting paid for? That's the first thing. And then getting comfortable talking about money. A lot of women are very uncomfortable walking into a room and asking for what frankly they've already earned, right? And so the big thing is to be able to walk into that room with confidence and assertiveness and be ready to talk about what you've contributed to the workplace, why you're entitled to a salary increase or a promotion, and really showcase your value. A lot of times we almost psych ourselves out because we think, oh, somebody else is doing more than me. Somebody else is better than me. Or we've heard somebody else's name be said more than my name at a leadership meeting. So obviously they do more. That's not necessarily the case. Some people are really good at self promotion, and women need to get a little bit better at it. And so it's okay to ask for something that you've earned. And I think a lot of us need to kind of get in that mindset early. But before you do that, you got to make sure you've done your research. You have to make sure that you've contributed to the workplace and understand how you've contributed and what value you've given. And as long as you've done some of that legwork, I think all of this becomes easier to do. And only one other thing, if I may, on
Mhm.
leadership roles, women need to advocate for leadership roles that are tied to the P&L. A lot of times I see a lot of women, in different roles, wanting to be leaders in different capacities. A lot of times it's around people issues, which is great because we love that, right? Most women, I'm not going to say all, but most women feel more comfortable in that. In order for us to really get the promotions, to get the equal pay, to be seen in leadership, we need to be confident about taking on roles that are tied to the P&L, that are tied to money, tied to finance, things that the company looks at. What is the bottom line? That's what matters. And we should be confident enough in our skills to kind of step into those roles and ask for those positions when an opportunity presents itself.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I love the fact that you really delved into that. I want to ask you as well, how did you handle criticism or pushback when you were advancing and breaking the glass ceiling?
Well, I mean, I was sad, of course, because you're always sad when you get feedback or criticism
Yeah.
that you're like, oh, am I? Self reflection. But frankly, a couple of things. The first thing is resilience and persistence. I say this all the time. What got you through it? I'm resilient, right? I remind myself of my accomplishments. I remind myself that maybe this is a dip, right? Maybe I didn't bring the best of myself to a particular role. Maybe I didn't do the best job on this file, but I know that I can do a better job. That's one thing.
Mhm.
The other thing is a support system. It's okay during those times to lean on family and friends. They provide a strong support system. They are encouraging, they're understanding. I think you have to lean on them. And I guess the other big thing that I've done is whenever I get some criticism or feedback, I kind of take a step back and I think about how I can use that to make sure that I'm bringing the best of myself to the next task. Sometimes I really leverage things like coaching. It's a lot of women get coaching in a work environment, and you can use coaching for different things. I find that when I've gotten feedback that I may or may not agree with, or criticism that, again, I may or may not agree with, I'm fine if I call, for example, my coach and run it by him or her. I've had several coaches throughout my career. I think women need to embrace that. I think that they help talk through some of the feedback and criticism that you get. But what you can't do is let it get you down. What you have to do is use it as a springboard to get better, to improve, and maybe to find a way to make sure that that person that gave you that criticism and feedback realizes that you actually did take it to heart, you reflected, and then you applied it.
Great. Thank you so much, Nancy. This has been wonderful. Nancy says breaking the glass ceiling is about paving the way for others to aim higher and believe that their hard work can make things possible. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Bye for now.